problems, you name it, that's coming up. If it's not just here, it's all around the world.
So, Keith, what do you think the solution is in terms of someone like Simon Galt expressing that level of discontent with New Zealand product? That has to be taken notice of,
I actually think it's quite fundamental. I think what farmers have to do is turn into foodies, to understand what their market is and to be proud of what they make. The first time I went to Normandy, and I was in this restaurant in Normandy, and they served me 4 different sorts of butter with the rolls. It was no charge, and they were from different farms. Now, I'm not saying we should do that, but what I had there was the local community immensely proud of their butter production.
Turning farmers into foodies is quite a big ask, Neville.
Well, the farmers' markets offer a kind of solution, and you have specialist kind of food retailers like Nosh that are spreading everywhere, and the supermarkets are reacting to it. There's more fresh fruit and vegetables and meat, and everything's labelled and all that kind of thing than ever before.
But farmers wouldn't be among their largest customers, would they?
No, but they should take the effort. I mean, a lot of farmers are doing that, and they're selling meat and all that kind of thing through these kind of channels, and certainly there's plenty of knowledge out there. It's just a matter of probably spreading it around a bit more.
And people should think too, farmers markets is a great idea. You know, do you realise that 50,000 New Zealanders shop at farmers markets every week? That's a big chunk of New Zealanders. That's a big amount, yes. And so there's a market for farmers who don't want to sell it all to Fonterra, who want to go down the road and do something themselves. I can remember when we first started making soft cheese in New Zealand, and everybody was poo-pooing the idea. $60 million worth is sold to New Zealanders now. That's a trade that wasn't there in 1965. So there are lots of opportunities.
Yeah, just look at olives, for example, which weren't even grown.
That's right.
20, 30
there
years ago.
There are huge opportunities, but this is the market where you work them in first, and then you go, you know, to Australia. I mean, I know of a meat producer that's just been to Australia, sold his meat into some of the best restaurants in Sydney and Melbourne. Why? Because his product was better than anything they were being offered from Australia. He's air freighting it over. He's not getting a distributor because he can't trust any of the distributors. He's air freighting it to Sydney and Melbourne, to top restaurants, and making a good profit out of it. That's where we should be. Yeah,
that's what we should be emulating right across the agricultural industries. Up next, we have a look at the headlines making the rounds. Welcome back to Straight Talk. Now it's on to You Said It, comment in the ag media, which we'd like to discuss in depth. Well, Neville, the news about the Fonterra vote on share trading. It's a brave new world for some farmers eventually when they're going to be able to trade shares amongst themselves. And
long overdue too, because this is going to really open up the industry to new capital anyway, if not quite outside capital, which they really just desperately need. So it's a step in the right direction. It'll probably take a while to filter through, but yeah, it's going to be very positive.
Good one. And Keith, animal welfare concerns raised their head again this week. Consumers, they must be getting fairly agitated about the fact, the regularity of some of these prosecutions and investigations.
Yeah, I think there is a growing feeling all around the world, not just in New Zealand. It's a big issue in the EU. It's a big issue in the United States. Especially with the large farms they have over there. When I saw some figures the other day that showed over 80% of the beef animals that go to beef are killed just before they die of natural causes because their livers are completely collapsing and their kidneys are on the point of breakdown because of the conditions they live in industrial farm lots. So it's becoming a huge issue. And as we've seen with pork here, and as we've seen with the palm oil and Cadbury's, consumers are not interested if they think you're a crook. Food is very emotional, and so if you're going to put it in your mouth, you want to trust the person. Yeah. And that's what's happening.
Neville, don't New Zealand consumers have good reason to feel that we're a lot better than the rest of the world?
They certainly are. If they've seen the movies that have come out from the States, I mean, there's just no comparison. But also you've got to look at the other side. The media do overreact to a lot of stories about food, like little insects and tin cans, that sort of thing. When you think of it in the bigger scale of things, these are very much the exception rather than the rule.
Right. Now, Phil Goff, he was speaking at Federated Farmers Conference down in Invercargill, and he was talking about changes that a Labor government might make to the Reserve Bank Act. What do you make of what he was saying?
Labor are banging on this one because a lot of business people and farmers think the exchange rate is too high. Well, there's nothing they can do about it, and talking to them and saying I can solve it by changing regulations or whatever, how the Reserve Bank works, is just really talking to the converted about something that will never happen, and it's quite irresponsible too.
Is it giving farmers false hope?
Exactly. Now, there's too many schools of thought on the future of the currency. In fact, the Canadian Reserve Bank came out last week and said that the Canadian currency, and that means Australia and New Zealand as well, the currencies will eventually devalue because of the rise in the Chinese yuan. Now, there's others who've told me that may not happen because of the US dollar, but there is hope there that the New Zealand dollar could devalue for good reasons over time.
Right. Keith, do you think New Zealand exporters are blaming the high New Zealand dollar for their lack of success in export markets when actually the solution's closer at home?
Stop thinking about the dollar. There are a whole number of points at which we should be considering when we're exporting. We're as far from our markets as we can get. We don't know what money we're going to get back for it. So for both of those things, you need to build in a greater degree of profit, so you've got flexibility to be in the market, to be strong in the market in terms of the customer knows how much they're going to pay for it because you're taking up the slack. So you've got to start at the top. At the moment, because we're a commodity price, the bleat's always, oh my God, the dollar's gone down.
Yeah.
But one way of doing this would be to exploit the different currencies. So if you're exporting to Europe and you're being paid in euros, you can't do anything about the fact that the euro has virtually collapsed. If you're exporting to Japan, no one complains because the yen is one of the safe currencies, even when the world's going backward. And with the Chinese currency, I mentioned a minute ago, obviously it'd pay to talk to the Chinese about being paid in yuan because that's going to appreciate.
Right, so that's something that we could be thinking about in the future.
We tend to think because all commodities are sold in US dollars, but that's not necessarily a very clever strategy.
No.
And also because we're selling in bulk. Think of it this way. If you're a company, and I've got to use a wine analogy here, if you're a company like Cloudy Bay, the idea is that you're working at the top of the market, so you're only in the top 5%. So you've got 40 markets around the world taking your product. So where you're losing in one, you're gaining in another. You've got a whole area of manipulation. You can control the amount you've got so that there's always a shortage in every single market so that you can maintain your price levels. We like to stick it all on one boat, sell it to one person. We flog our stuff in bulk.
Now, Neville, looking overseas, New Zealand Farming Systems Uruguay, they're looking for some more money. How's this likely to go?
Yeah, they came out with I think they gave it a media interview and said they needed $60 million US and they could raise half of that through a bond in Uruguay. But this company's quite controversial. They said they had their feet to the flame, but they don't seem to have done much about it. And they obviously are looking to New Zealanders to provide the rest of that capital, which is around about $40 million. But everything you hear back from South America is all potential and no delivery.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll follow and see what happens there.
It could be a good punt, though.
Yeah. On the other side of things, with the continued Chinese interest in the Crayfer farms, the Land Corp bid, and the Chinese company Natural Dairy expressing outrage that there has been the possibility of Land Corp coming in. What do you make of that, Neville?
This story hasn't left the headlines, has it, since Land Corp came in? But they could well be outbid because Natural Dairy filed their annual accounts in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange this week, and lo and behold, we found that there was a $400 million contingency in there to buy farms in New Zealand, of which they probably don't have to spend more than half of that. The other half could go to Mary Wang, who knows? But they've got to get the approval, and Land Corp might find that the competition's quite tough if that money is for real.
Right. So the Chinese buying into New Zealand, if they are given approval, Keith, that would be a good way of getting the Chinese customer closer to the New Zealand product. Yes.
Not necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily. China is huge, and the Chinese market is dependent entirely on us having somebody there that's going to be doing something for us. If the us is Crayfor Farms, that's completely broken down. That's like having a Chinese hotel, an owned hotel in New Zealand, Chinese Airlines flying Chinese people in and taking the profits back to China. The whole Crayfor Farms deal is a breakdown